Wednesday. It is Wednesday, and thank you for coming to this version of the Harriet Kamek Show. I am so very grateful that you've taken time out to be with us. As you can see, we're still in summer mode. So hopefully it stays that way for the next, I don't know, for the next few days, right? Right? So it's Wednesday, and I can't believe it. I'm so grateful to wake up this morning because there's so many people who did not wake up. And there's so many people who woke up on the other side of life. You know, they woke up and found themselves in a bad marriage. They got a notification they're going to get divorced, or they woke up, their house is in foreclosure, or they woke up and they're in a hospital, right? Or you woke up and you have to take your child in to the hospital. Or you woke up this morning knowing that when you went to bed last night, you were already sick, but hope some magic would happen overnight so that you wouldn't wake up this morning in the same position. Or you woke up, you went to bed last night and you didn't have a job. And you woke up this morning thinking if you woke up this morning, it would be different. Well, I have news for you. You need to stick around and find out how, for the next few days, how you can get through some of these things. This is what the Harriet Kimmick Show is about. We focus on the things that matter, on the issues that matter to people, ordinary people like you and I. Say ordinary. We're just ordinary people trying to live this life out one day at a time. We're not perfect. We don't always have the answers. We don't always know how to put our best foot forward. Sometimes we make a mistake. Sometimes we don't even know where we're stepping. Living witness, I can point to that. I can pontificate all day and point to that. Life is what it is. But I am just so happy this morning that I get another chance to be with you and to say good morning and to greet you and to say, well, we're going to talk about while we're here, let's do something. One of the things that I try to focus on is to try to move us in a direction where we begin to see that there's a world bigger outside of ourselves. And even for you, if you're going through something this morning where you don't know how you're going to pay the next bill, you don't know if they're going to evict you or not, you live in an apartment, you live in a house, and you're going month to month, and you don't know if they're going to evict you. It could be that you are a senior and you have to move. It could be that you have to relocate because of a new job. Well, thank God for that. There are possibilities in store, right? And it could just be that the person whom you love, the person whom you wanted to be with, could be your lifelong love lost person. And all of a sudden, they don't want to be with you anymore. It could just be that you lost a job. Could just be they just put your car on the tow truck and moved it out. And you're like, well, what the heck happens next? Whatever it is that you are going through, and we all face issues, I just want to encourage you that if you hold on and hang on, something will change. I'm a living witness that things change from day to day. And if it happened for me, I know it will happen for you, right? Because we're all witnesses. And just hang in there for a little bit. If you feel like you're at the end of your rope, maybe you're swirling in depression, maybe too much stuff has happened. Maybe you lost someone. Maybe someone important to you died. I don't know how I got into this conversation part of it. But maybe someone you know died. Maybe you've had too many deaths recently. You know, it's just been like 3 years of just stuff happening. I just want to encourage you, just hang in there. It will get better. Life happens to all of us, and none of us are impervious to it. None of us are immune to life. I'm sitting here as a living witness. I had to watch as people whom I loved died. And I am still here and I have to keep on in spite of. And it happens so frequently and with such frequency and such, closeness to you that you might even say to yourself, what the heck is going on? And maybe I need to put things in order. Maybe it's my turn next. Whatever the situation might be, it is life. But while I'm here, my thing is I'm going to do something while I'm here. And I encourage you to do the same thing. Even though you are going through right now, think about someone else. Ask yourself, if I'm going through this, someone else is going through it. I wonder how they're coping. And go online, Google it, see what other resources there are, and see if you can help yourself through it. I don't know why I'm telling you this, but it's for somebody. A few years ago, it was me in this position where I had lost my full-time job and I had rent to pay and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I was living on unemployment, right? And I had to figure out my income contracted 66 and 2/3%. Well, it was more than that. It was when they did it, it was 85%. I had 85% less income than I was accustomed to having. My lifestyle, I was learning how to live on reduced income, on a contracted lifestyle. In the midst of that, opportunities presented themselves that did not look like opportunity. It was when I was approached to be on mainstream radio the most. It was when I was approached to speak more. I kid you not. So I had to look at where the trend was going and follow the trend. And it gave me hope because I was still glued to having that paycheck every 2 weeks, that paycheck on the 15th and the 31st or the 30th. You remember those? I was glued to it, that was what sustained me. And I learned that wasn't it, because when they pulled it, I found myself still standing and I was still breathing. So what was I going to do? What was the sum total of life? I was accustomed to living life, going out to eat 3 times a week or whatever, going out on the weekends, whatever it was, buying all kinds of stuff. My income contracted. And at the time I was not alone. I still had 2 children. My oldest daughter was in college. Can you imagine? She's now in college. And when she needs money, I can't send her any money. Right? So I've been there. We've all been there, but I'm still here. And if I made it through without sickness, without disease, without any of those things, what does that tell you? You can too. And I encourage you this morning, if you need help, just reach out, pray about it, find who is the right person. Because sometimes you tell someone and it's the wrong person, which makes the situation worse. So pray about who is the right person to tell this to so that they can help you. There are resources available. Do not be ashamed and do not be afraid to go and find resources. I know it's going to embarrass you and it's going to kill you that you have to go through this, but it's called survival. So you need to step on that to get to the next. Okay, I don't know who that was for, but I felt led. I felt like I had to say that to someone to encourage you that life is not over, right? Hello, good morning. So I just want to greet you this morning and just to tell you how grateful I am. Now you understand how I don't take anything for granted. I don't take my life for granted. I don't take the fact that I am here for granted. I don't take the fact that we are all here. And while we are all here and we get an opportunity to meet with one another, commiserate with one another, we ought to help one another, promote one another, and speak highly of one another. Speak to each other with kindness, because you never know what someone might be going through. You see people in the grocery store struggling to pay their grocery bill. Just reach out and say, I got that. If you can, you see somebody at the gas station and they look like they can barely make it to pay gas, reach out and say, I got that. You see somebody struggling to buy something to eat, they might not want to tell you that all the coins they have is all the money they have, and they got to get this to eat because they're going to use it to hold them for a while. Just reach out and say, can I do that for you? Is it okay? Right? Or you can just signal to the person behind the counter that I got that, so the person doesn't even know who did it. Right? I like those kinds of things, right? Be nice to people. Be gracious and kind to people, right? Give someone something. Somebody's admiring your purse too much. That means they really like it. Say, you want it? I'll just empty everything out and give it to you. Somebody admiring a dress you have on, you say, I have another one like it. If you want this one, you can have it. Just be nice to people. It really doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, when we all lay down in a long time box, right? You can't take anything with you. No, you can't, right? But what you can do is, while you're yet here, live gloriously, do great things, set up something, do something, go volunteer. It will make you feel better, right? Right. There's a woman named Kate Spade. She killed herself about 2 years ago. And you can tell that something was up, because when you look at a lot of the stuff that she wrote that they have now encapsulated and they sell them on her merchandise, right? You look at it and you can tell that was someone who was going through deep, dark depression. She happened to be writing those things at the darkest moments when she thought her life was over. Her husband then had asked for a divorce, and they were working through it. They had built this empire, and now he didn't want to be with her anymore. And she was working through it. And she wrote some of the nicest things. When I read them, I actually said some of the things, I went to a website and saw them when she died a year ago. And I remember saying to myself, this person was going through something, You never know what people are going through. So be kind to one another, right? Which brings me to what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about gun violence. I want to talk about America's love affair with guns. I kind of briefly touched on it yesterday. And I know there are plenty of people get real uptight when you start talking about guns and gun ownership, because people start thinking it's my right and someone is going to take my right. And that's not what this is about. This is an open conversation to talk about the ways in which we can use our gun ownership to better advantage, to better use, rather than to take it and it gets disappeared and then it turns up killing other people elsewhere, right? I wanted to talk about it from the fact that I don't know what we do with guns in America. We seem to love guns. This is a gun-loving, gun-toting country. I don't know if it comes from our heritage where the country was bigger than us and there was all this land and we really didn't know what was in the forest. So we felt more secure having a gun because it was quicker, it could defend you. I don't know if the residue of that still resonates in our DNA, or whether we just felt like, well, it's my country, I can do what I want to do kind of thing. I don't know. Whatever it is, I'm being satirical. Whatever it is, we have a problem and a love affair with guns that is proving to our detriment. And I, for one, can't believe that we still are talking about this in 2019. I thought we would have resolved this. I thought we would have seen it. And I know for most people, you are like, well, it doesn't affect me because I don't live in the areas that are prone to violence. And I don't live in the areas where gun violence is an issue. The people I know who have guns, they use guns for sport, right? They use guns for hunting. They use guns for a part of their sportsmanship, and it's part of your manhood. I think in a lot of ways, when people say that I have a right to guns, they perceive it as if someone is coming to take an essential part of their manhood away. In some spaces, gun ownership is passed from generation to generation. It's kind of like a rite of passage. A young man turns 12 and he goes hunting with the other grown males around him, his father, grandfather, uncles, and all the grown males around him. So it's perceived then as part of manhood, part of being a man, that a man is a man when he's handed his first gun. A man is a man when he knows how to load a gun, right? And so when people say, I don't want my rights affected, I'm beginning to think that they are also saying, I don't want my manhood affected. I don't want to know that you want to take away from me something that I value, that has been valued in my generations for several generations. I think in a lot of cases, that's what it is. And we need to address that because those are relevant concerns. Those are concerns that people have about their gun ownership. And we need to think about that and to act on it and to recognize it and to give it the respect that it deserves. It's someone else's experience, validated. Okay, that's how you feel. But in the broader picture, the rest of us don't feel like that. For some of us, guns means violence. Guns equate to violence. In some spaces, guns just mean you just get together at a fair and everybody shows what they have and they go out in the woods and they hunt wild animals or birds and they kill animals that otherwise would have plagued human life. But instead, in today's contemporary ways of life, guns are being used to kill people, and often innocent people, often people who are just bystanders. Recently, 2 women who were advocating for an end to the gun violence in Chicago, on the south side of Chicago, were gunned down on the corner. You can't tell me that that was not intentional. So it tells me that there are people for whom gun ownership or for whom the sale of guns is a profit. So it may not be for you, where gun ownership is not your issue. It's not about you. And that's what we need to separate out of it. It's not the right to own guns. It's the people who are selling guns. They're selling guns indiscriminately. They're selling guns to people who are not being checked. It goes unchecked. And the rest of you are like, well, I have a right to go buy a gun. Well, if you feel that way, don't you want to know that a serial killer who just came out on parole after doing 15 years can buy a gun? Wouldn't you want to know that? Wouldn't you want to know that the pedophile who raped 15 children and who has a violent past, don't you want to know that he's out on parole? Wouldn't you want his information captured if he goes to get a gun? And wouldn't you want to know? Let me just ask you this one. Wouldn't you want to know if the next mass shooting that's going to take place, wouldn't you want to know that someone who is mentally ill has bought a gun or two, and often had bought something like an AR-15, the one with the heat sensor, the one with the scope and all kinds of stuff, the one that when it goes into a human body, it breaks up and shatters the tissue and the bone. You cannot live. If you've been shot by an AR-15, you're not here. You don't live. Very rarely, unless it glances off. But according to the emergency room physicians, it penetrates bone and destroys the flesh and shatters the bone, so nothing is left. And typically mass shooters aim for the mass. They either get the head or the mass. Then you notice they don't tell you where the persons who are killed, where they are, because it is dangerous. Because if it is dangerous and uncomfortable to the families, but more importantly to other potential mass shooters out there, it will tell them specifically what to do. But they do know. That's why the feds, police, the internet, to see where these websites are cropping up, to see who is talking to who and who is politicizing and who is talking about it. But as for me, as someone who has seen violence up close and personal, it frankly has become a matter of life and death to me. It has become a matter of we need to be more conscious of the choices we're making. So this is not about gun ownership. Gun control is not about gun ownership. Gun reform, requiring people to have background checks, is not about gun ownership or your right to manhood or your right of passage or any customs associated with the ownership of guns. Gun control reform has to do with, I don't want somebody who did time in jail and used a gun to kill other people or used a gun for armed robbery to come out and have access to guns. That's what gun control and requiring background checks is all about. Someone who is mentally ill. And nowadays, people use the internet as their message board. It's their personal message board. It's their way of saying, this is who I am, this is what I believe. So I wouldn't want to know that there's somebody out there who's using this saying they want to go and kill a certain group of people, or they want to go and kill schools. They want to go and shoot up schools because they'll get more attention, or they want to attack a school bus, or they want to go into a mall. I don't want to know that those people exist and that no one knows who they are and that they just bought an AR-15 assault rifle. So the debate around gun ownership has nothing to do with your rite of passage, but it has everything to do with personal safety. It has everything to do with public safety and the fact that we all want to feel safe when we're in public spaces. Gun control is also about the access to guns and the ease with which guns are accessible within the inner city communities of across America. Guns are more readily accessible than food, water, and electricity. You heard me right. Guns in the inner cities of America are more accessible than food, water, and electricity. That's some serious issues that we need to address. Those are the issues that we need to talk about. Those are the issues we need to focus on, because guns being so accessible to generations of people who have been subjected to economic disparities and who have been marginalized economically and economically oppressed for so long, that's a danger. That's like a ticking time bomb. So I guess the people who sell guns know that. They're making their money anyway. At the end of the day, they can go to Aspen and go skiing, and they can go to... It has nothing to do with your right as an individual to carry your legal gun that you own that got stolen, right? Or you sold it, and now all of a sudden it shows up somewhere else in the inner cities across America, creating more and more distress, creating more and more poverty. Guns and gun control and guns and violence somehow are tied to poverty. Have you all noticed that? Because people who are wealthy and have their guns locked up, the gun only comes out when they're going to show off to their friends that I bought this, if they're gun collectors or whatever, or when they're going to go hunting. You know, when they're going up north and they're going to the cabin and they're going to go hunting with their friends, that's when guns become relevant to them, right? Or when they're driving around the inner city, they have their guns just in case they're attacked. But do you see what I mean? Why are you anticipating being attacked? Why is that an issue? Do you see? All of us now have come full frontal with the fact that I am a ticking time bomb. At any minute, somebody's going to pull out a gun and attack me. Whether I go to Walmart, whether I go to Target, whether I go to any big box, big blue store, any big box store anywhere, if I go to the theater, if I go to watch a movie, if I go out to eat, if I just go shopping, man, if I just exist, that's the trauma that has come from gun violence. And we need to stop it because we seem to have, more than any other country in the world, we seem to have an affair, a love affair with guns more than anybody else. And the reason for that is historical. It comes from way back, and we seem to think so, but we can change that. Sociologically, we can change that by rewiring what we perceive to be safety, rewiring the ways we think about what is manhood, right? And the rites of passage associated therein, right? Somebody's saying something here. Let me hear what you got to say. This is Timothy Forsyth. It's the culture of fear from the division of races that begin with a civil war, manifested fear of man's fear of inability to contain power over one another. So it's a culture of fear that promotes a culture of violence. That's what you're saying. The culture of fear, when people, that's one part of the portion. I guess the people who had the economic power had to enforce their economic power, right? And the way they did that, morning, Dr. James, the way they did that was they used guns to reinforce their opposition and their power. So that what we're no longer at in the Civil War, though, right? We're no longer in a civil war. We're in this time frame where we're not at war with one another, at least not provincially. We might have a culture of wars, which is really what we have right now, right? But what about the gun violence in the inner city? See, the people who might have fought in the Civil War and who have that idea that they have to have power over another race, they live in the suburbs. They own their guns, but they're not using their guns on one another, and they're not using their guns in racial conflicts. Most of the gun violence we're seeing today is not white men shooting black men. That's not what we're seeing. What we're seeing is black on black crime, where black men are shooting other black men, where brown men are shooting black men or are shooting other brown men. That's economics right there. That's a culture of violence right there. That's saying that the only way I feel like I can get over is by any tool I have because I'm so subjected down here and nobody's going to listen to me. That's a culture there because that is saying your life is not valued. Your life is not valuable because no one has validated your existence. So I get the point about the Civil War and its manifested intent, but we're no longer in a civil war. You see what I'm saying? So gun violence we're seeing now is not civil. It's cultural. We need to wrap our minds around that. It's cultural because that's how we've been socialized. That conflict is contained and treated with guns. That's our love affair with guns. We feel that guns perform the ultimate power and is the ultimate symbol of power. And let me just put it into context for you why I say America has a love affair with guns. Have you ever been to the Washington Monument? The one in DC. It looks like a giant, but it looks like to me, it looks like a gun upside down because just look at how it's shaped and the base of it. It's just like a gun. You see what I'm saying? To me, the Washington Monument looks like a gun upside down, right? And so we need to look at what are we saying when we design these things? What are we saying? That's where the love affair with guns come from. Let me help you out. I said this yesterday, but for those of you who weren't here yesterday, in countries where the homicide rate is low, there are no handguns. There's no access to handguns. Did you hear that? In countries where the homicide rate is low, right? What does that tell you? We are the ones with a problem. So our problem is not with hunting rifles and shotguns, because you can't own a shotgun in your house without, anything else. You don't need a license for that. You don't need to have a permit to carry that. So that's not the problem. The problem is handguns. There are too many handguns. Yesterday, I was reading something on Twitter with the Michigan State Police where they pulled over some people at 11 o'clock one the night before or 2 nights before on 8 Mile and Van Dyke, their car. So they flashed them and pulled them over. When they searched them, they found out that two of them had guns. One of them wasn't even from Detroit. He had guns. No plates, and you have guns at 11 o'clock at night. You want to tell me that you weren't going somewhere to use those guns? That was a divine intervention to stop somebody's life from ending. Do you see what I'm saying? We have a culture of guns. The access to handguns is what is our problem. There's nothing wrong with Johnny Brown going to apply to get a CPL or whatever they call it, a carrier's permit, so he can carry it around. The problem is after you get the guns, what do you want to do with it? If you find that owning a gun suddenly makes you feel empowered, you have issues with power. And you have issues with the ownership of guns. Do you see what I'm saying? And so we got to find out what is it that we are finding so attractive about guns. We have issues with that. We have issues with it, and we need to stop because it's going and going. The children in most parts of the country, children have gone back to school. Yes. Kids are now back in college. We're about to enter into football season. College football, I think, starts this coming weekend after Labor Day, right? College football starts after Labor Day, right? So, and the NFL starts after Labor Day. So we're entering into a season where baseball and football run concurrently, and then later on in the fall, the NBA starts. Why they do that, I don't know. Don't they have enough going on? Like, seriously, right? Can we just focus on one sport at a time? They're so greedy for it. And this is why I'm saying we the people down here are the ones who have got to stop it. Because the people who sell guns make big money off it. The money is literally flowing into the gun makers' coffers. They're making hundreds. They're making what you call fist over dollars, like fistfuls of cash. They're the ones who can walk into a room. Let's say they walk into a space that's 100 feet by 100, and they can get lost in all the money, and they will just sink to the bottom, and you can't hear from them ever again, and there's just more money, right? Do you see what I'm saying? So here we go. And stuff is happening over in Britain. They've suspended their parliament. Well, welcome to real life. Here in America, we had a government shutdown and we didn't die, so you'll survive. Don't brief out over it. I don't know why you're all so worried about it. The Queen okayed the request. It's over. Okay, so we had a government shutdown and we are still here. Right? So what I'm saying is we got to look at the facts. And the facts before us are very clear. We've got to stem the violence that is associated with guns, because the more handguns there are the more guns, is the more deaths we're seeing. My good God in heaven, it is astronomical. I pulled the reports I live in Michigan. I live in Detroit. So Detroit is in the southeast corner of Michigan, right? I love where I live and I love my city and I love living in this part of Michigan. It gives me a unique perspective because when I go into other areas, you get a real perspective of how people the state over feel about where they live and how they feel about everybody else, right? So when we're here in Detroit and in the surrounding part of southeastern Michigan, the gun violence here is uncontrollable. I was writing a grant recently and I had to pull the reports on gun violence pulled from the state police's database. If you don't believe me, they put it out there. Just go read it. Just go read the 2018. I'm not going to tell you. I literally did this, put my hands over my eyes and shut my laptop. And I said, enough. I never visited that page again. Because for every incident of gun violence stands for a family who has lost a loved one. Somebody who had to go down to a funeral home, go down to the coroner, identify a body. Somebody had to go talk about funeral arrangements, which is its own kind of messed up way of life. Somebody had to go stand over a grave somewhere or give the permission for someone to be cremated, right? And somebody is left with cleaning up what's left of the person. Real life stuff. You have to go through there. Have you ever, I'm going to tell you this. I feel like if you've ever had someone die and you had to go clean up their house And you had to be the one to go empty the refrigerator, stuff you don't normally think about. Like they lived by themselves or they lived with other people. You have to go empty the refrigerator. You have to go through their clothes and sort it out. Give away. Some family members want to take something. You have to go sort through their belongings. You have to go through their car. You have to go, for God's sake, the very day they died, they just used their toothbrush that morning. You have to go look at their toothbrush knowing they'll never use it again. You have to go look at their clothes knowing they'll never wear those clothes again. They'll never put their feet in those shoes. They'll never carry that purse. They'll never touch their wallet. Have you ever had to touch the wallet of someone who died and you had to take their ID out? Have you ever gone to a funeral home and they ask you for a copy of the passport so they can cancel the passport because that person no longer exists? Then you will understand what gun violence means until it happens to you. When my mother died from cancer. And when we knew she was going to die, 3 weeks before, it's staring you in the face. And my family said, you go make the funeral arrangements. You go talk about it. They couldn't handle it. And I remember I went to a funeral home. And when the gentleman sat me down and said to me, we will need a copy of your mother's passport and I said, why? And he said, because we have to cancel it. And I said, why would you cancel her passport? And I said, because she won't exist. I walked out. If you have ever had to deal with what is left after a person dies violently, you will understand, and you will understand what gun violence is. Think about for 1 second, all of you who are champions of gun ownership, and champions of being a man and owning a gun, and I need my gun and I gotta have my gun, and you put your gun in your car and get in your car and drive out. The families of the Sandy Hook massacre, that's what it was. The 28 families who had small children. And at the end of that day, they had to go home knowing that their little boy and girl would never sleep in the bed, would never wear her little PJs, would never come and hug your neck and kiss you and say, Mommy, I love you. Daddy, I love you. Would never, ever sit at the breakfast table again and eat breakfast. They would never grow up. If you have ever had to deal with that, then you will understand gun violence. Do not look in my face and tell me gun violence is not real. Every person who has a child in school, your insides quiver every time that child has to drive out. Every time that child goes to school. I can't wait for my daughter to leave high school and go to college. Jesus, if you could just hasten the process. I didn't realize how much it affected me until after the Parkland shooting. The Parkland in Florida shooting, the Marjorie Douglas School, remember that one? After that shooting, the next morning, I had to drop my daughter off at school. She was a junior in high school. And I kid you not, everything in me, the closer I drove up to the school was my hands got clammy, my heart palpitated, my legs turned weak and watery. When she was coming out of the car, I did everything to stop the tears. And she said, Mommy, it's going to be okay. For the first time in my life, I'm fearful about going to school. That was it for me. Because the day before, students her age had gone to school and they were laying on a piece of slab in a mortician's office. Do you understand what I'm saying? We've got to stop laughing at people whose lives have been destroyed by gun violence. Stop being flippant about it. It's their problem, not mine. It is your problem and it is mine. The trauma that results from it, we all have to deal with. That's where all this mental illness is coming from. They're blanking it now and calling it mental illness because people go into depression and some folks' survival mechanisms never kick in after being exposed to a traumatic episode of violence. And because it never kicks in, they become depressed and more depressed. They're unable to go on with their lives. Have you ever touched the hand of someone who lost a child to gun violence? It's the most vacuous experience. When you look in their faces, you have to wonder at their capacity to bear such great harm. You look at them and touch them and you're like, my God in heaven, have you? Think about it. Think about that. So every time you decide to pontificate that guns don't kill people, people use guns to kill people. Let me help you out. The gun is sitting there, and even with an automatic weapon, somebody has to wire it up and push the stuff in it and set it so it just goes click, 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 click. We use guns to represent. Guns have replaced what is supposed to be good. Guns have replaced being strong. Yes, you're a man. Well, stand up like a man. You don't need a gun to defend you or to push you up or prop you up. If you're a man, you're a man. What is manhood? You've allowed yourself to be emasculated. You know how you did that? By being silent, by not speaking up, by not saying, I don't like that. I don't want that. That does not represent manhood. That's not what being a man represents. Just like we women said, that's not what womanhood is. We say it. Where are you guys at? Where are you guys to say, no, Harriet, guns does not typify my manhood. Guns is a rite of passage. Guns is something that my family, the male members of my family and I celebrate. Well, say that. Why am I saying it for you? Why does it have to come out of my mouth? You stand up and say it. But you don't denigrate people. You're literally being flippant and dismissing people whose lives have been touched, traumatized, violated by a gun. You don't believe me? Go any day to any inner city hospital. Talk to an emergency room physician or an emergency room nurse. Let them describe to you what happens when someone has gotten shot by an AR-15. Let them tell you. I'm going to post the link to the article written. I posted it last year throughout the episodes of mass shooting, and I'm going to post it again. Because it seems to me, just like the mass shooting that took place in El Paso and Dayton, we moved on. Those people are burying people. Do you know they're going to grave sites? They're now going through the lives. They have to separate. Oh my God, did they have money? Oh my God, I forgot about that. I forgot about the fact that I have to go to the bank. I forgot about the fact that I have to, the myriad things that make up a human life. Somebody has to sit down and go through it bit by bit. You have to call and notify friends. You have to go on Facebook and notify the people whom they know. You have to look through their phones, to go to the phone company to unlock it, to figure out what their passwords were. You have to go disassemble their emails. That's why we need more and more servers, because people are dying and nobody has anybody's passwords. So emails just keep going to dead people's email box. If you know someone, until it happens to you, you really don't know what it is. Let me hear what somebody's saying. Guns were something I played with daily as a boy. As a man, I don't own one, nor want or need one. I have a voice. Right? Like I said, guns are part of people's family history. Right? I don't know why you would give a child a gun to play with. I think guns are dangerous, especially loaded guns. Here in Detroit, we have seen so many cases where children have been shot by careless parents, careless adults, who allowed a loaded gun to be near a child. Children are eternally curious. And if you don't tell them, don't play with that, they will still play. And even when you tell them, don't play with that, they're still going to go up there and play with it. But what we had to do was we had to tell people so that they will know, right? We have to, when it happens and it comes to the attention of the authorities, they have to discipline people. Guns kill people because people use guns to kill people. Whether you like it or not, that's something the NRA has said. But until we come to the place where we recognize that people use guns to kill people, and we're not in a war zone, right? Have you been to a country that has been in wars for 10 years? How are those people living with the constant threat of gun violence? You see all these deportations taking place where people are going back to Iraq, for instance. A lot of people are being deported. They came here as refugees, right? And now they have no legal basis on which to stay in the country, and they're being deported back to Iraq. They go back and they can't survive. They're killed. because they don't know how to live in such a place. The constant threat of violence. The east side of Detroit is a war zone continually. And the mayor has done nothing about it. Y'all jumping up tough for the mayor? He has done nothing about the violence in Detroit. There are more guns on the street of Detroit, and neither the police nor the mayor are doing anything about it. They kind of just let it play out, let them kill one another. And they continue to kill one another over and over again. Gun violence. No matter what you do. The other day, they invited me to a rally to talk about stop gun violence. And I'm like, no, you're not seeing my face down there. I'm like, no. I said, for what? To go stand on another platform and talk about ending violence and say, is it going to help? Is the violence going to stop that night? Are they going to stop pulling the guns out? No. Until they make it difficult for people to own and have access to guns, it's going to continue. I guarantee you, if you call an amnesty right now on the east side of Detroit and tell them all to bring in all the guns, you're not going to get all of them. You're going to get some of them. You probably won't have any gunshots for a couple nights or two. If you take up all the guns, you know what those suckers are going to do? They don't have anything to fight with. They're not exactly going to pull out knives and machetes and start using that. But they might go across the road to 8 Mile or 15 Mile and go buy some more guns and bring it back. That's why the police have to continue. It looks like harassment, but they have to continue taking the guns away from people. But where are those guns going? From what I understand, where are all those guns that are locked up in evidence lockups? Are they still there? Or are they just disappearing because they've been there for so long? Nobody knows what happened. The case disappeared. The witnesses disappeared. Gun violence. Think about it. Do you see how penetrative it is? It's not as simple as they want you to think. It's not. And I'm calling on the mayor of Detroit. Yeah, they know about me. They know me. The mayor of Detroit and the chief of police. What are you all really doing about the gun violence? Nothing. Not a damn thing. Hear me out. The mayor of Chicago, the governor of Illinois. What are they doing about the violence on the south side of Chicago? Not a damn thing. They're probably in bed with the gun makers, probably get campaign funds, but there is nothing being done about ordinary people losing their lives. So here's how it translates, right? So Tom lives here and Mary lives here. Tom has a beef with Mary. Tom tells his cousin, his nephew, his son, they go shoot up over here at Mary's house, and the violence is contained and localized to them. Then Mary's family retaliates, and it just goes back and forth between the two. Sometimes drugs are an issue because people take people's drugs and don't pay for it, or they don't pay on time. So they go and fire warning shots at a family member so the other person will pay up. And when that doesn't work, they go and kill them. Right? Sometimes it's spurred by envy. How come you have that car and I don't have that car? Well, I want your car. They're going to shoot you up to take the car away. Sometimes it's nothing more. I read a story, one of the stupidest crimes I read the other day. Did y'all see that one? Where the three young men apparently have nothing else to do. They didn't even have a record. And they called for a lift just so they could take the man's Escalade. The driver showed up for the Escalade. He picked them up. Then they made him drive to a certain location, pulled guns out on him, took his car, took his credit cards, took all the cash he had, like idiots. Like people don't have tracking systems on phones and cars. Then they took the phones through the window. Y'all are following these episodes of Power, not realizing that it is giving you suggestions. You know, all these young people watch that show Power on Showtime. Y'all have money to waste to pay cable? Come on now. You waste money on cable for them to watch Power, and then they come out here thinking they're in some episode of Power or something, right? That's a show. When it's done, they all walk away, and you end up in jail. So these young men, the guy who owned the Escalade finally called the police. He got to a place where he could call the police. The police searched for the vehicle, had the vehicle under surveillance, found the vehicle. They had the vehicle. They even stepped out of their home and went into the vehicle, drove the vehicle to a party store. use the man's credit card. They made them do all of that. Then they nabbed them. 3 young men had nothing to do, bored out of it, but now have what? 25 to life, facing down 25 years to life. We've got to do stuff like that. We have to do that. When you see them locked up, stop talking about free this and free that. They need to understand that there is a price to pay, because you just destroyed someone's life. They could have killed that man who was just trying to earn an honest living. So what? You envy his Escalade? Go work. You can go buy your own Escalade. Work and you can buy your own cars. Work, you can buy your own house and have your own computers. We need to start teaching these kids the value of work. We don't tell them that. We tell them everything is easy. We tell them one group is responsible for your despondency. And if you have to be like that other group, go to damn school. They won't go to school. We're not requiring enough of them. Replace the violence with messages of affirmation. Tell them you better go get to school or I'm going to get to you. Start requiring it of them. Start showing them the value of work. You don't have to work hard. You can work smart. There are other ways to make money that are completely legal. Go do it. No, you can't. You don't even have to own a car to drive for Lyft or Maven or one of them, all of them. You can rent a car. Go make money the legal way. Stop rolling up on people and puffing weed and think you're in some episode of some show on Netflix or whatever. Because this is the violence that continues. And young people today, if you notice the average age being killed is 14, between 14 and 28. I kid you not. Think about it. That's the average age. When you read and it's 35 and 36, you're like, whoa, you're a bit old for this. I kid you not. So here they are. They have a dispute. One young lady was killed a couple years ago because they were standing in a group and some people drove fast down the street. And the brother said, hey, man, there are people standing here. You can't just drive fast. The guy went down the street and came back with a gun and shot up everybody. If they find him, he should be locked the hell away. Probably on the run, probably in Tennessee or Kentucky or Alabama under a different name now. Do you see what I'm saying? Because they have this personal affront, this self-image. I'm like, you don't have a pot to pee out of. You don't have a degree behind your name. You didn't even finish school. But you have pride. Where your pride come from? What have you done for the society to respect you? Hold a gun? You see what I'm saying? We have a love affair with guns. Gun ownership is pride, manhood, and power. That's what we equate it with. We got the wrong idea, people. All of us. We got the wrong idea. We got to change it. We got to change our paradigm. We got to change the way we look at guns because it has proven very, very destructive. I know this is not a popular conversation. This is not a conversation that you want to hear me have. You want me to hear me talk about love and sex all day. There's a time and a place for that. Right now, this is a conversation to have about guns because we're rolling into the holiday season. Pretty soon it's going to be Halloween. It's going to be Thanksgiving. It's going to be Black Friday. And it's going to be Christmas. All of us deserve to go through the holiday season without being traumatized. We all want to go Black Friday shopping. Not me. I do the Cyber Monday full thing. I just shop online. Get the same prices, even better deals. Right? But we all deserve to go through the holidays without one threat of a mass shooting. Everybody in Detroit deserves to go to sleep and not have to wake up tomorrow and there's some mass shooting, there's some gun violence on the east side or on the west side or on the southwest side or on the northwest side or on every side. Sometimes it looks like it takes the whole compass and just say, whoop, pick a spot. Boom, that's where I'm going to go do it today. And I got to give a shout out to the brave merchants who are still doing business in Detroit, who still operate a gas station and a party store. And everybody's like, yeah, they're part of the problem. Well, you be brave enough to go open your own business and see what kind of insurance you are going to pay to do business in Detroit. Talk about that. You just look at it from one point of view. This is the thing with us in America. We're so insular in our thinking. We look at stuff from one perspective and we don't look at the big picture. America, wake up. We need to stop looking at gun violence from only my perspective. That's the only one that counts. So you only see your perspective. Look at the bigger picture. Yeah, it might not happen to you, but it is a contributing factor. Your distance, your feeling about it is contributing to the malaise that has swept over the nation. And don't tell me we are all not collectively responsible. You bet your ass we do. We're all paying for it in one way or another. In many ways, that contributes to the trauma. If we didn't have the prevalence of guns and access to guns, mass shooters can't just walk up somewhere and go order an AR-15. If credit card companies are not policing and seeing the person buying AR-15 and buying how many hundreds rounds of ammunition and not have an alert on it to send the alert to the law enforcement for that jurisdiction, come on now. They're just in it because to win it, because the person charged $2,500, they're going to make at least 15 or 20% interest on that. It's all our responsibility. You're a neighbor and you know you have some weird neighbor who lives next door, right? What happens? I got to go. It's 10:50. Gun violence. We got to stop it. I need you all to stop it. Go to my website, harrietkamek.com. Go to the exodusfoundation.com. Y'all can see that, right? Can see that, right? Go to the exodusfoundation.com and you can see what we do. And please, I ask you, say no to guns. We need to stop the violence. Stop the guns. Look at me, people. Look here. Look here. Look. Look at me. We need to stop it. Every day, I encounter somebody whose lives have been touched by gun violence. I have to absorb their angst. If you've ever shown up where the violence has just taken place, and if you've ever had to touch the hands of a family member who is burying a family member who died from gun violence, if you've ever had to look in the face of a survivor of gun violence, if you've ever had to touch someone and feel and look in the vacuous space in their eyes where that pain resides, where the pain never goes away, then you understand why we have to do something about it. We need to stop looking at it like, well, this is my two space. It doesn't affect my space, so it's not, right? Recently, somebody asked me, they assumed that I own guns. And I said, no, I don't. I don't believe in guns. And they're like, well, what if someone attacked you? I said, well, the angels maybe took a vacation, but the angels of God are going to have to protect me. They've been doing a good job so far. Amen. No, I'm not, succumbing to that. Somebody says, being a victim of gun violence and a parent of a teenager killed by police shooting in Tennessee on 3/30/2000, unnamed, and a victim of attempted carjacking, I must and will protect myself. This man is a victim of gun violence, and his teenager was killed in a police shooting in Tennessee in 2000. And he's been a victim of attempted carjacking. Do you see what I'm saying? But you have your gun, Mr. Forsyth. You're not using your gun to kill anybody, are you? Exactly. So you are the exception rather than the norm. The norm today is people, and I bet you are a licensed legal gun holder. There you go. It's the access to guns, the proliferation of guns in the inner city where it is so easily accessible that everybody wants to be a gun owner because I'm powerful and you can't touch me. And I'm this and I'm that. And instead we're mauling each other. The pain, I'm sorry for your pain, Mr. Forsyth. I'm sorry. That is not easy. 2000. You think it's any lessened by the time? No. That pain does not go away. It still takes your breath away, that loss. Those parents at Sandy Hook who lost all their baby kids, all those little coffins we saw going up a hill that day. The parents who have lost teenagers, the parents who have to deal with the loss, the spouses who are left behind, the children who never got a chance to know their spouse. You remember the gun violence that took place on Southfield Freeway where some dude got mad because a lady was driving and according to him, she cut him off. She was just executing a turn on the freeway. He got mad because she overtook him. So he drove up and fired into her car in the middle of rush hour traffic and killed a 3-year-old who was in the backseat of her car. It wasn't her child. It was her godson whom she was taking to watch Sunday school. So some episode of some children's show that was going on. Can you believe that? The parents were at work and got the phone call that their child was at the hospital where the mother works. And he died. You really sit and expect me to sit here and say having this and that is okay? I'm not going to say that. People hurt. What do you tell that parent? Her child was in a car seat. He wasn't ejected out of the car. The car didn't have an accident. Some guy, they caught him eventually, and I know they're going to put him away. He's going to get time. I don't think he even went to a jury trial. I think he just made a deal. They gave him enough time to lock him away for good. Why? He didn't value his life. And because he had no value on his life, he didn't value that little 3-year-old's life. Do you all realize that's part of the problem? We're dealing with people who don't have any value for their lives. They don't believe that they're valuable. Otherwise, they would have taken care with it. Do you see what I'm saying? So he didn't, according to the dude, he didn't know there were children in the car. It doesn't matter. You were firing at a car with people in it. It doesn't matter if children were in there or not. You were still firing at a car with people in it because he was in his feelings and he felt powerful. 24 years old, just got out of jail, out on parole, and felt powerful. What is this power that guns give you? Well, now he's feeling some other kind of power. He's in jail where he belongs for the next 30 years. It should be a lifetime, because for the rest of their lives, that family has to deal with the fact that their 3-year-old is beneath the ground. He'll never be 4. He'll never be 5. He'll never be 6. He'll never be 7. He'll never know what to expect. They'll never have to teach him to drive. That's what happens with gun violence. So talk to me one more time. Here's Mr. Forsyth. You will never get over it, and the prior news of killings just open your wounds of grief. Exactly. You never get past it. Those people who lost their kids in Sandy Hook, all those little babies, do you think they ever get over it? One of the parents killed himself recently. He couldn't deal with it anymore. And he was a neuroscientist. So he began doing research into what parts of the brain correspond to the desire to kill people in mass situations. What traumas does the person experience? We're a nation so traumatized, we don't even know ourselves. And the grief that we live with stays with us for a lifetime. This is why people like you and I have to talk about it. Because when you hear it, perhaps it will give you pause to think. Perhaps it will awaken a desire in you that is latent, that realize that we have to do something about it. We have to change the conversation. We have to guide the conversation to legislative action that is going to impact people's lives. Maybe it just simply means you all just start saying, put the guns down. They're driving past each other on the freeway and they're feeling powerful. They just take out guns and shooting up people. Like, are you serious? You need to be disciplined. Yes, you do. You're way out of line. We got to talk to these young people. And I know nobody wants to talk to them because they're big and they're powerful. So let the system do the talking. They go to jail and they encounter Tyrone and everybody else who is bad in jail. Amen? Amen. That's where they need to go. They're going to spend some time sitting down and thinking about it. You see what I'm saying? Gun violence. Have you ever thought about the people? Here's someone, Mr. Forsyth, I'm sorry. I hope I didn't open a wound. I never even knew. But I should have known statistically that there is someone in my friends group who is a survivor of gun violence. I'm sorry. My deepest sympathies are with you. And everybody who has ever survived a mass shooting, if you have a relative or someone you know has died from gun violence, my sincere apologies. There are no words I can ever tell you that will communicate how sorry the rest of us are for the pain and the grief you are exposed to every day. I pray the love of God and the peace of God that surpasses my ability to understand rests, remain, and abide with you. I pray for everybody who has ever had to deal with getting that phone call or seeing the worst part, the police officer show up at your door asking you if you are so and so. And you know deep down exactly why. I am asking all of us, our love affair with guns, we should no longer romanticize it as Hollywood has taught us to do. We should no longer look at it. Young boys and girls are looking at Hollywood films of other young men driving through streets firing guns and want to go down in infamy. It's time for us to start looking at it for what it is. It's wrong, destructive. It destroys people's lives. It gives grief unintended. And I pray that you seek someone to guide you through it. I'm sorry, Mr. Forsyth. I opened up a wound that's 19 years old. I'm so sorry, Timothy. I'm sorry. And to all of you, I am sorry. If I had not, the very year that my mother died, when mom was sick, was the year that I was being pushed more into advocacy for gun control and gun laws. And I met so many survivors as I traveled across the country in so many focus groups here in Detroit and in other parts of the state, in Flint and in other states. We became a community of survivors of violence. And I was humbled by what I had seen and heard, what takes place in Miami-Dade County. I was humbled by what's happening in Chicago. I was humbled. Sacramento, I was humbled. LA, I was humbled. Be that as it may, I am asking all of us to think on these things. Think about where you will be most effective, where you can do the most help, where you can bring relief, and start right there. That's all we can do. In the meantime, I'm asking everybody to pray for peace to reign in our country. We love this place. We want to live here. We love it, right? Pray for peace to reign. Pray that the people who today, right this minute, is writing someone's last day on earth. Right now, we pray that they will stop and that the gun violence will stop. Somebody right now planning to go hurt someone with a gun, I pray right now that it stops right this moment. And I ask you to pray that every day. As often as you remember, pray it. You never know. You might be interceding for someone. You never know, right? Mr. Forsyth, peace on earth. Peace to you. Grace and peace be with you forever. You and yours. Grace and peace. We need grace, don't we? Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. Be blessed. See you tomorrow, right? See you tomorrow. Be blessed, everybody. Hey, everybody. Be blessed. Thank you for joining me. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.